The Unspoken Truth. Part 1. The Day the World Froze. Stop right there before you dive into this story. Have you ever asked yourself what you'd do if the person you loved most doubted you at your most vulnerable moment? If this story resonates with you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And by the end, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think forgiveness is always possible? The shocking hook, abandoned in the delivery room, the world for Ethan Reed was supposed to be a seamless, perfectly executed financial transaction. A rising star in Seattle's unforgiving tech landscape, he was all precision, ambition, and ruthless clarity. Until the day his perfectly curated life shattered, the day the world froze for his fiancée, and he walked out on her in the delivery room, convinced the baby wasn't his. 2 years later, seeing a child who was his spitting image was not a moment of epiphany. It was a cataclysm. Ethan, normally immaculately composed, stood utterly petrified at the entrance to the hospital room in the exclusive maternity wing, unable to take another step. The faint, sweet cries of a newborn echoed from inside, but all he could truly hear were the insidious voices of his parents in his head, whispering doubt and certainty with equal, crushing weight. His father, a titan of industry with a cold, calculated eye, had told him days earlier that Clara Hayes, the woman he was set to marry, the woman he had loved since college, had been seeing someone else behind his back. The timing doesn't align, Ethan. That baby cannot be yours. Don't ruin your legacy for a fleeting mistake. His mother had added the perfect emotional pressure, reminding him of his career, the tech empire he was building, and how one wrong decision could unravel everything. Initially, Ethan had fought the doubt. He had wanted to believe in Clara, but fear, that cold, corrosive entity, has a way of blinding even the most intelligent man. When Clara turned her head and saw him standing there, her face, though tired and pale, lit up with such a raw mixture of love and desperate hope that it nearly broke him. Her eyes, those beautiful, familiar green eyes, called out to him, a silent, heart-wrenching plea for support, for presence, for belief. But he didn't move. Instead, he took a step back, then another, until he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving her utterly alone with their newborns. And as the elevator doors closed, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders, but it was not relief. It was a terrifying, hollow numbness. That kind of numbness that crawls over you when you've just made a decision you know, deep in your soul, you can never take back. The aftermath. A promise in the silence. Clara didn't scream when he left. She didn't cry or run after him. She simply looked down at the tiny baby in her arms, whose miniature features already showed the unmistakable signs of the man she had just loved, and now, irrevocably, hated. Her heart didn't just break. It slowly, methodically unraveled, like a loose thread, until all that remained was exhaustion and disbelief. She whispered soft, fierce words to the infant, a solemn promise that she would protect him, that he was wanted, even if his father refused to see him. In the days that followed, Ethan buried himself in work. He signed deals, gave press conferences, and smiled for photo shoots. The financial tabloids praised his focus, his clarity, his unwavering ambition. No one knew what he had left behind to maintain that image. No one asked, and he never offered an explanation. When people mentioned Clara, he dismissed her with a vacant gaze, pretending she'd been nothing more than a fleeting mistake. Meanwhile, Clara moved to a small, unassuming apartment just outside the vibrant, rain-soaked city of Portland, Oregon. She juggled sleepless nights and endless diapers, with freelance design work and mounting bills. She became quiet, introspective, and and strong in ways she never imagined she'd need to be. Every time she looked into her son's eyes, blue like his father's, she felt a storm of conflicting emotions. She loved him more than life itself. But forgiveness for Ethan? That was something she couldn't even allow herself to contemplate. Her body healed, her spirit did not. She never told Ethan about the long nights in the emergency room, about the first fever, or the first cooing laugh. She never sent photos or messages. If he wanted to walk away, he had to stay away. But deep down, somewhere beneath the anger and the fatigue, a tiny sliver of her hoped. Not that he would return, but that he would realize the monstrous thing he had abandoned. She didn't need him to fix what he'd broken. She just wanted him to see the truth. And the truth, she knew, was growing stronger every day in the arms of a child who resembled his father more. With every passing hour, what would you have done in Clara's place? Would you have tracked Ethan down for support? Or would you have completely let him go, prioritizing your own peace? Comment your opinion below. Your thoughts help us shape the story. And don't forget to share this video with a friend. 2 years later. The shadow and the light. 2 years passed, marked not by calendar pages, but by sleepless nights, scraped knees, and small, precious victories. Clara's life had restructured itself around her son, Leo, who had grown from a fragile newborn into a vibrant, curious toddler with a mop of bright blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. The same eyes that mirrored the man she had spent so much time trying to forget. She woke up before the sun every day, often to the sound of little feet pattering toward her room. And every night, she collapsed into bed after juggling work, motherhood, and the heavy silence that settled once Leo was asleep. Money was always tight. The part-time paralegal work she'd taken barely kept them afloat. She supplemented her income with late-night independent legal research projects, long after Leo was tucked in. Clara didn't speak of Ethan, not with friends, not with family, and certainly not with Leo, who was still too young to ask where his daddy was. But she thought of him more than she cared to admit. Every time Leo smiled a certain way, or said something with the exact cadence Ethan once used, she felt a sharp, silent ache in her chest. She no longer cried. That part of her had dried up in the first few months after Ethan left. Now, she simply carried the loss, neatly folded into her days, like the small scar on her abdomen, a brutal reminder that something had been taken from her. There were moments when the bitterness threatened to consume her, especially when she recalled how easily Ethan had walked away. No explanation, no farewell. He hadn't even held Leo. He'd based his decision on lies, lies told by people who were supposed to protect him. And what hurt the most? He hadn't questioned them, not once. He had believed her capable of betrayal. He had believed their son wasn't his, and he had walked away without looking back. But Clara didn't allow the bitterness to show. She couldn't afford it. She had a small boy to raise, and Leo needed joy, not shadows. So she learned to smile again. For him, she took him to the park every weekend, even when she was exhausted. She read him the same bedtime story 6 nights in a row because it made him laugh. She taught him to say please and thank you, to tie his shoes, to be kind. Every milestone was celebrated like a national holiday. Still, there were hard days. Days when Leo was sick and she had no one to lean on. Days when she wondered if she'd ever trust anyone again. Sometimes, late at night, when the world was quiet and her defenses were down, she imagined what might have happened if Ethan had stayed. If he had held his son that day. If he had seen past the lies. But she always pushed those thoughts away. She had stopped believing in second chances. The fateful glimpse in the park, one crisp gray afternoon, She took Leo to a large city park in Vancouver, British Columbia, after work. He loved the swings, and she loved watching him fly, his little sneakers kicking at the sky. She sat on a bench with a thermos of warm coffee and a book she didn't intend to read. Leo's laughter filled the air. Then, across the open field, she saw him, Ethan. He wasn't dressed like a corporate shark that day. No suit, no tie, just dark jeans and a wool coat. He looked older, a little more worn, but unmistakably the same man she had once loved. Their eyes met, and in that split second, she saw something flash across his face. Shock, disbelief, and perhaps even recognition. He stared at Leo, who had just hopped off the swing and was now running toward her with a wide, uninhibited grin. Ethan didn't move. He stood there, frozen, as if his world had just tilted violently on its axis. Clara turned away just before Leo reached her, her heart hammering so loudly she could hear it over the wind. She scooped up her son and whispered, "Time to go, sweetie," trying to keep her voice steady. That night, as she tucked Leo into bed, she couldn't stop trembling. She didn't know what came next. She didn't know if Ethan had truly seen what she feared, and hoped he had seen. But for the first time in 2 years, something had cracked in the wall she had built around herself, and it terrified her. Because if he had seen Leo clearly, if he knew, then everything could change. And having survived so long alone, Clara wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of earthquake. Do you think Clara should have run away with Leo forever? Or is it important for Leo to know his father? Share your viewpoint in the comments. And remember to subscribe. Part 2 is coming soon. The Unspoken Truth. Part 2. The Reckoning. Don't scroll away yet. If you're just joining us, make sure you've liked and subscribed. We're about to dive deep into Ethan's perspective. Have you ever done something you regretted so deeply it kept you awake at night? Keep watching and tell us in the comments. The cataclysm of truth. Ethan Reed didn't sleep that night, not after what he had seen in the Vancouver park. That child. The way he ran, the way he laughed, the exact shade of his blonde hair. Those same piercing blue eyes that stared back at Ethan every morning from the mirror. It had been a fraction of a second, but in that moment, something inside him lurched violently. He had always believed he had done the right thing, or at least the necessary thing. His parents had been so sure. The timing was off, they'd said. Clara had been distant. She'd smiled at other men. The seed of doubt had been expertly planted, and he had watered it with fear and self-preservation. But seeing Leo, so unmistakably his, made every single one of those carefully constructed excuses crumble like dry leaves. He spent hours pacing his minimalist high-rise condo in downtown Seattle, ignoring calls and canceling meetings. His executive assistant was baffled, unsure why the usually serene, razor-sharp CEO had suddenly gone dark. Ethan offered no explanation, because he didn't have one. All he had were questions. What have I done? How could he have allowed himself to believe such a heinous lie? And most damning of all, what kind of man abandons his own child without even asking the truth? By morning, the exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was soul deep. He sat at his kitchen island, staring at an untouched cup of cold coffee, replaying the day he walked out of that hospital room. The image returned with crystal clarity. Clara holding their newborn, her eyes full of silent hope, and him retreating without a single word. He hadn't even looked at the baby. The shame was sudden and blinding. He didn't deserve forgiveness, but he knew with absolute certainty that he needed to find them. He needed to see the boy again. He needed to talk to Clara, even if she slammed the door in his face. The trail of guilt. It took him 2 days to track her down. She had moved, changed jobs, and cut off most mutual contacts. But Ethan had resources. And with every new piece of information, his guilt only deepened. She had been living alone, raising his son without help, without even child support, because she had never asked for anything. She hadn't tried to punish him. She hadn't exposed him in the media. She hadn't demanded a penny. She had simply disappeared and endured. When he found the address, a quiet, low-rise apartment building in a cozy Portland neighborhood, he sat in his sleek German car for almost an hour, watching the building from a distance. He saw her emerge with Leo, tightly holding his small hand as they crossed the street. Leo was chattering excitedly, pointing out things only he could understand, and Clara was smiling down at him with a tired tenderness that pierced Ethan's heart. He didn't approach them that day. He couldn't. He wasn't ready, and they didn't deserve to be ambushed, but he started going back. Every day for a week, he watched them from afar, not because he wanted to invade their privacy, but because he needed to see who they had become without him. Leo was full of life, curious, cheerful, and fearless, and Clara was no longer the soft-spoken girl he remembered. She was now fierce, focused, and radiant in a way that came not from ease, but from survival. Ethan began to realize that by leaving her, he hadn't just lost his son's life. He had lost the chance to grow alongside a woman who had become something extraordinary. The first words of truth. The following week, he finally gathered the courage to speak to her. He waited outside Leo's daycare, timing the moment carefully. When Clara emerged with Leo skipping beside her, he slowly got out of the car and approached. Her eyes locked onto his instantly, and her entire body tensed. She gently pulled Leo behind her, protectively, like a reflex. Ethan stopped several feet away, unwilling to cause any more harm than he already had. "Clara," he said, his voice raw with nerves. "Please don't leave. I need to talk." She looked at him, her eyes hard but unreadable. "There's nothing to talk about." "Yes, there is," he said softly. "I saw him. I know." She exhaled sharply, glancing down at Leo, who was tugging on her coat, oblivious to the tension. "That's the problem, Ethan. You wouldn't know." He swallowed, unable to deny it. "I was wrong. My parents lied. She cut him off, her voice quiet but shaking. "You left. You didn't ask. You didn't even hold him." The silence that followed was heavy. Ethan nodded slowly. "I know. I've lived with that every day since I saw him in the park. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I had to come. I had to tell you to your face. I'm sorry, Clara. I was weak, I was scared, and I believed the wrong people. But he looks just like me. I saw it. I know he's mine." She looked away, her eyes glistening, and knelt beside Leo, brushing a stray leaf off his coat. When she stood up again, she didn't speak for a long moment. "Finally, I don't know what you want from us," she continued, her gaze fixed on the distance. "But if you're going to be here, truly here, you can't disappear again." "I won't," he said quickly. Too quickly. "You can't say that yet," she retorted. "We'll see." And with that, she took Leo's hand and walked away, leaving Ethan standing in the cold afternoon air, devastated, but somehow lighter than he had felt in years. It wasn't hope yet, but it wasn't the end either. Ethan has finally admitted his mistake, but is admitting it enough to earn a second chance, or is the damage already done? What would you have done if you were Clara right now? Comment your thoughts below right now. Hit that like button if you think Ethan has a very long way to go. A pattern of presence. The days following their first conversation were fragile, suspended between uncertainty and a quiet possibility. Ethan didn't push. He didn't call or show up unannounced. Instead, he waited, unsure if he was respecting her space or simply too afraid to risk rejection again. He returned to his routines, but nothing felt the same. The boardroom lost its thrill. The applause at shareholder meetings rang hollow. The numbers on the screens, meant little when he couldn't stop thinking about a boy with his smile and a woman who had once trusted him enough to carry his child alone. Clara, meanwhile, couldn't stop reliving the encounter. She was angry, furious even, but beneath the rage was a strange tremor, not of fear, but of something she wasn't ready to name. Ethan had looked genuinely lost, not rehearsed or manipulative. And most disorienting of all, Leo had liked him. He hadn't cried or hidden behind her. He had looked at Ethan with an open, innocent curiosity, and that fact tormented her. She wasn't ready to forgive him. She wasn't sure she ever would be. But she also couldn't deny the pang of watching her son meet his father for the first time, oblivious to what he had missed. The next weekend, Clara sent a brief text. It wasn't sentimental. It was cautious and clear. "If you still want to see him, meet us at the park at 11 on Saturday. Just you." Ethan stared at the screen for a long time before replying with a simple, "I'll be there." That Saturday, he arrived early. He wore jeans and a gray sweater, trying not to look like a corporate machine. He hadn't known what to bring, so he carried a small construction truck Leo might like and a book under his arm, something his mother used to read to him as a child. When Clara arrived with Leo bundled in a bright yellow jacket, the boy immediately darted toward the playground. Ethan didn't move, unsure if he should follow. Clara stood beside him, arms crossed, not quite looking at him. "Thank you for coming," he said carefully. She nodded, her eyes still tracking Leo. "I don't know what this is yet. I just thought he should have the option to know you, that's all." "I don't want to confuse him," Ethan said. "I just want to be around, even if it's just as a friend right now." "He doesn't need a friend," she shot back. "He needs a father, someone who shows up and stays." "I want to be that," he said, "Uwarina." "Then don't say it," she replied. "Prove it." Leo ran up right then, sand on his hands and a wide grin on his face. He looked up at Ethan and pointed to the swings. "Push me." It was such a simple request, but it landed like a stone in Ethan's chest. He smiled softly and nodded. "Yes, buddy. Let's go." They walked to the swings together. Ethan gently helped Leo sit and began to push, not too hard, listening as the boy shrieked with laughter. Clara watched from the bench, her arms still crossed, unsure what to feel. Part of her wanted to weep. Another part wanted to stand up and walk away. But mostly, she just stayed seated, because for the first time since Leo was born, she wasn't doing this alone. The healing of trust over the next few weeks, these visits became a pattern. Ethan came to the park every Saturday. He brought small things, snacks, toys, books. More importantly, he brought time. He learned how to talk to Leo, how to match his pace, how to answer his endless whys. He never rushed. He never made promises he couldn't keep. And slowly Clara began to let down her guard, inch by agonizing inch. One afternoon, when Leo had fallen asleep on her lap in the sun, she looked at Ethan and asked, "Why didn't you question it? Why was it so easy to believe them?" He didn't evade it. "Because I was scared. I was selfish, and I didn't want to lose everything I thought I'd earned. But I lost more than I ever imagined. I see that now." Clara looked at her son's face. "He's incredible, you know. You missed so much." "I know," he said quietly. "But if there's still time to learn who he is, even a little, I'll take it." She didn't answer. She just continued to hold her son. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to protect him all by herself. And that, though she wouldn't say it yet, mattered more than anything else. I will continue with part 3 to complete the rest of the story and bring the conclusion. The unspoken truth. Part 3. The building blocks. Welcome back, Heart Story followers. If you've been following Ethan and Clara's journey, you know the stakes are high. Ethan is showing up, but is it enough? Hit that subscribe button and let us know. Do you believe consistency can finally heal a deep betrayal? Let's find out. The fragile calm. The arrival of the 5th month in their new rhythm brought a fragile calm, like the first clear days after a long storm. Ethan was no longer a stranger in Leo's life. He wasn't called Dad yet, and he never asked to be. But when Leo tripped and scraped his knee one afternoon, he instinctively reached for Ethan before anyone else. Clara was sitting only a few feet away, present. Yet her son had chosen the man who once walked away over his mother's immediate comfort. That moment shook her in a way she didn't want to examine too closely, because if she did, she would have to acknowledge that Ethan was becoming a real, undeniable part of their world. And it terrified her. Not because she didn't want it, but because she did. And wanting meant risking everything again. Ethan felt the shift too. He started anticipating Leo's needs, noticing the small things. When he got overwhelmed by noise, when he needed quiet time before being spoken to. What stories made him giggle? He asked Clara questions, not just to engage, but to understand. He didn't try to overstep boundaries. If anything, he respected her authority so deeply, it sometimes took her by surprise. And every time she braced herself for him to fail or disappear, he didn't. One day, after a long afternoon at the Children's Museum in Vancouver, Leo fell asleep in the back seat of Ethan's car. They had all gone together. Clara had insisted on taking separate cars at first, but Ethan had offered to drive so Leo wouldn't have to be moved twice. She had reluctantly agreed. After parking outside her apartment, they sat in silence for a while, neither of them wanting to wake the boy. "Do you ever think," Ethan said softly, not looking at her, "how different everything might have been if I had stayed that night?" Clara didn't answer immediately. She traced a circle in the condensation on the window. "Sometimes, but mostly I try not to." "What good would it do?" "I think about it all the time," he admitted. "How I let fear make a decision that cost me everything." Clara turned slightly in her seat. "You're here now, and he's lucky. But I can't go back and erase those years. I can't unlive what I went through." "I'm not asking you to," Ethan said. "I'm not here for you to forget. I just want to be worthy of being part of what comes next." Clara sighed and looked back at her son. "He is everything to me. You hurt both of us, even if he doesn't know it yet." "I know," Ethan said. "I live with it every day. But I'll keep showing up, even when it's hard, even if I don't get everything I want. Because he deserves a father, and you deserve peace." That night, after carrying Leo inside and tucking him in, Clara sat on the sofa and allowed herself to cry for the first time in months. Not because she was broken, but because a part of her, just a splinter, was starting to hope again. And that kind of hope is the most terrifying kind of all. Audience interaction and CTA. What does home mean to you? Is it a place, a person, or a feeling? Tell us your definition in the comments. We want to hear your deepest thoughts. The quiet becoming. As the weeks melted into months, Ethan began to help in more practical ways. He volunteered to take Leo to his weekly speech therapy sessions. He stayed for parent-toddler playgroups. He even started cooking Sunday breakfast when he was invited inside. It started with small things. Clara asking him to grab milk from the store while she changed Leo, or him wordlessly handing her the wipes. But over time, those small things became habits, and the space he occupied in their lives slowly grew less temporary. Leo noticed it too. He no longer called Ethan by his full name. He called him Eth, a nickname born of childish mispronunciation and worn with affection. Ethan didn't correct him. He wore it like a badge. And then, one evening, while Leo drifted off to sleep on Ethan's chest during a movie, Clara looked over and realized her fear had been replaced by something else. She still couldn't name it, but she was no longer preparing for him to disappear. She was no longer wondering if he was playing a part. He wasn't perfect, but he was real. And real was more than she had ever thought she would get. It wasn't forgiveness yet. It wasn't love. But it was close. It was the beginning of a life neither of them had planned, and both of them were now brave enough to reach for it. The moment of healing autumn settled softly over Portland, draping the streets in warm gold and rust-colored leaves. It had been nearly an entire year since Ethan had reappeared, and while no one had labeled what they had, the routine they had built was undeniably shared. Ethan was there at almost every day, picking Leo up from daycare when Clara had late meetings, reading bedtime stories, attending preschool open houses. He had become a fixture in their home, not as a guest, but as something more stable. One Thursday evening, after a long day at work, Clara came home to find Ethan and Leo in the kitchen. They were making pancakes for dinner, batter everywhere, flour on the counters, Leo's face smeared with maple syrup and pride. It was chaotic, but it was beautiful. Ethan looked up, slightly sheepish, and said, "We got hungry, and someone wanted to help." Clara didn't scold them. She just laughed. A soft, genuine sound that surprised all three of them. That night, after Leo was in bed, she poured 2 mugs of tea and sat across from Ethan at the kitchen table. "Do you ever think about what this is?" he asked quietly, not looking directly at her. She stirred her tea slowly. "All the time. I just don't know how to define it yet." "Me neither," he admitted. "But I know it's not pretend. I know I care about him. And I care about you." That never really stopped Clara. She looked at him then, and her heart did what it used to do when they were younger, when love felt like an open road instead of a collapsed bridge. "I don't trust easily anymore," she said after a pause. "And I can't promise you I'll be able to give you what you hope for." "I'm not asking you to promise anything," he said. "Just keep letting me be here. Let me earn it, if I can." And she nodded, because that felt safe. Because it was honest. He wasn't just showing up. He was staying. Through the messy, the exhausting, the real. And Clara, watching him curled up on the edge of her sofa at dawn during one of Leo's sick days, realized he wasn't doing this for guilt anymore. He was doing it because he loved his son. And because he loved her. The meaningful ending winter arrived, blanketing the city in a soft, quiet snow. Their lives had settled into a gentle rhythm that almost looked like a family. Leo thrived, secure, happy, and bright. He knew his 2 parents now, and he never questioned that they both belonged. One cold afternoon, right before Christmas, they attended Leo's preschool holiday concert. Leo was standing proudly in the front row, his reindeer antlers slightly askew, and Ethan sat beside Clara, filming everything with a shaky hand and misty eyes. Clara looked at him once, catching the rawness in his expression. That, more than any apology he could utter, told her how much he had changed. Later that night, as Leo slept soundly in the back seat of the car, Ethan didn't start the engine right away. "I never thought I'd get to have this," he said, not looking at her. "This?" Clara asked. Her voice quiet. He nodded. "Not just being a father. Being with you, too. You let me in, even when I didn't deserve it." "You didn't," she said with honesty. "But you stayed long enough to earn your way back in." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small zip-wrapped package. "I was going to wait until Christmas, but I think maybe now is the time." Clara looked at it warily. "What is it?" "It's not what you think. No ring, no dramatic gesture. I know we're not there yet, but I wanted you to have this." She unwrapped the package carefully, revealing a simple photo frame. Inside was a candid snapshot of Leo on Ethan's shoulders at the park, laughing so hard his face was flushed. Engraved on the silver bottom were the words, "The moment I knew I'd never leave again." Clara stared at the photo for a long time, her throat tight. "You've changed," she whispered. "I had to," he said. "But more than that, I wanted to." They didn't kiss that night. There were no grand declarations, only a long, quiet drive back to her apartment. When they arrived, Ethan carried Leo upstairs, tucked him in, and prepared to leave. But at the door, Clara stopped him. "Do you want to stay for dinner tomorrow?" she asked. "It's just spaghetti, but it's everything." Ethan smiled. His heart swelled in a way it hadn't felt in years. "I'd love that," and so it continued. Slowly, unhurriedly, without pressure, without guarantees. Just two people finding their way back to something that had been broken. Something that was still scarred, but was healing in a way neither of them had dared to hope for. For the first time, Clara stopped bracing for the worst. She allowed herself to believe in what was growing between them. And Ethan, humbled by everything he had once taken for granted, finally understood the depth of what it meant to be part of a family. Not just to love, but to stay. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave us your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us keep telling stories that touch the heart. The unspoken truth. Part 4. Home is a person. This is it. The moment we've all been waiting for. If you've loved this journey of betrayal, regret, and slow healing, you have to stay until the very end. We want to know, what profound lesson did you take away from Ethan and Clara's story? Tell us in the comments. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe so you don't miss our next story. The spring thaw. Spring arrived with subtle changes. The snow melted into soft puddles along the sidewalks. Leo's winter boots were replaced by sneakers, and Clara found herself opening the windows again, just to let the cool, fresh air sweep through the apartment. It had been almost a full year since Ethan had re-entered their lives, and the change in all three of them was undeniable. Leo was thriving, secure, happy, and bright. He knew his two parents now, not just one. And he never questioned that both were entirely his. He didn't understand the past, and Clara hoped he never would. Not the loneliness, not the betrayal, not the cold silence that once sat between them. All he knew now was warmth. For Clara, there were still moments of hesitation. Her wounds hadn't vanished. They had simply healed over in quiet, invisible ways. But Ethan had continued to earn back every ounce of trust. He never missed a school event. He never forgot a pickup time. He never crossed the invisible boundaries she had initially drawn. In time, she stopped noticing those boundaries because he stopped needing reminders. He understood her pace, her silence, her looks, the weight behind a single glance. He knew when to lean in and when to give her space. And that, more than anything, had been her cure. One evening, they sat on the front steps of Clara's Portland apartment, watching Leo blow bubbles across the lawn. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden hue over everything. The light made Ethan's hair look blonder, and his eyes softer than she remembered from years ago. Leo giggled, chasing the bubbles with his entire body, arms outstretched as if trying to catch the whole sky. Clara smiled, her shoulders relaxed. There had been so much tension between them once. Now, there was only this quiet, profound satisfaction. Ethan leaned back on his hands and looked at her intently. "You know, I used to think my whole life was about achievement. The next big deal, the next title, the next headline. But none of it ever felt like this." Clara turned to him, her expression open. "Like what?" "Like home," he said simply. "Not a place, but people. You and Leo are my home." She didn't speak right away. That word, home, meant something different to her. It wasn't soft rugs and warm meals. It was survival. It was long nights alone with a baby and no answers. But she understood what he meant, because lately she had started to feel the same thing. The three of them, imperfect, entwined, had built something strong. Not because it had been easy, but because it had been hard. and yet they stayed. "I never thought I would say this," she said, her voice low. "But I'm glad you came back." Ethan looked down, his throat tight. "I didn't know if I'd ever deserve to hear that." "You don't," she said, but with a smile that softened the words. "But you're here, and that's more than I ever thought I'd get." Leo came running up right then, collapsing into Clara's lap in a whirlwind of giggles and grass-stained knees. Ethan reached over and brushed his hair back. Leo leaned into the touch without hesitation. It was natural now, unquestionable. Clara watched the moment, etching it into her memory. There had been so many nights when she had rocked this child to sleep, wondering if he would ever know his father. And now, here he was, entangled between the two of them. Safe. The next chapter. An open road. Weeks later, on a warm April afternoon, Ethan asked if they could go to a special place, just the three of them. He didn't say why. He just told them to dress comfortably. They drove out of the city, past open fields and winding roads, until they came to a quiet house with a wraparound porch in the green countryside outside of Portland. It wasn't ostentatious. It wasn't grand. But it was beautiful, with enough room for a small boy to run, and enough tranquility for Clara to breathe. "This was my grandmother's house," Ethan said as they got out of the car. "She left it to me when she passed, and I never did anything with it. I didn't know what it was for. Until now." Leo immediately ran off through the tall grass, as if it were his private kingdom. Clara walked the perimeter slowly, taking it all in. The old porch swing, the ivy climbing the columns, the constant breeze. Ethan joined her after a moment. "I'm not asking for anything," he said, his voice cautious. "But I wanted to show you this, because I want to build a life. Not just moments, not just weekends. I want the whole thing." Clara looked back at the house, then at him. There was no fear in her this time, no suspicion, just the quiet certainty that came from time, consistency, and a love that had been tested and proven real. "I don't know what the future looks like," she said, "but I'm not afraid of it anymore." He held out his hand to her. She let him take it, and in that small moment, under the open sky, with the sound of their son's laughter echoing from the trees, what had once been broken between them was whole again. Not perfect, not untouched, but complete. And that was enough to begin forever. Final call to action. The meaning of forgiveness. Thank you for following Ethan, Clara, and Leo's incredible journey. We witnessed how a deep, painful betrayal can, with immense effort and consistency, pave the way for a stronger, more authentic love. What does true forgiveness mean to you? Is it forgetting, or is it simply moving forward? Let us know your final thoughts in the comments below. We love reading every single one of your insightful opinions. And before you go, please share this story with someone who needs a reminder that second chances are possible, and subscribe for more compelling narratives. The Unspoken Truth. Epilogue. The home we built. Welcome back for one final chapter. This is the moment we solidify their future, a true testament to the power of commitment and second chances. If this story has made you believe in love again, please give this video a thumbs up. And tell us below, what's the most romantic gesture you've ever witnessed? A new beginning in the old house. It was a crisp Saturday morning in October, nearly 18 months after Ethan had returned to Clara's life, and 6 months since she had declared she was not afraid of the future anymore. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth. They stood together on the wide, wrap-around porch of the old farmhouse, the one Ethan's grandmother had left him, the one he had wanted to build a life in. It was no longer an empty symbol. It was a home. They hadn't rushed. For months, they had poured their shared energy into renovating it. Clara, with her meticulous eye for detail, designed the sunny open-plan kitchen. Ethan, with his executive focus, managed the structural overhaul. Leo, now a boisterous 4-year-old, supervised by painting the occasional wall with his tiny brush. They had officially moved in 2 weeks ago. Tonight was their small, intimate housewarming. Leo was currently busy in the yard, wearing his favorite barrier hat and helping Ethan stack firewood, or mostly just carrying small, unnecessary twigs. Clara leaned against the wooden railing, watching them. The scene was so utterly domestic, so profoundly peaceful, that it felt like a dream she had earned through sheer exhaustion and resilience. Ethan looked up, catching her eye, and the raw, humble love she saw there was the only proof she needed that the arrogant, fear-driven man who walked out of the hospital was gone forever. He walked up to her, brushing pine needles off his sweater. "What are you thinking about?" "This," she whispered, gesturing to the house, to the yard, to Leo. "It's perfect, Ethan. It's loud, messy, and sometimes smells like sawdust and spaghetti," he countered, gently taking her hand. "It's real." The promise on the porch. He led her inside, pulling her toward the center of the living room, which was filled with sunlight streaming through the freshly installed windows. The scent of new paint and old wood hung in the air. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice surprisingly formal, making her heart skip a beat. "Is everything okay?" He smiled, a deep, nervous smile. "More than okay. When I showed you this house, I told you I wanted to build a life. Not just moments, but the whole thing." He paused, running his thumb over the small scar on her abdomen, the faint mark that reminded her of the hard truth and the love that followed. "I know I hurt you, Clara. I know I walked away from the most precious thing in my life because I was weak and scared. There is no day that goes by that I don't try to earn back the trust I broke." "Ethan," she said, her eyes welling up, "you don't have to do this. You've been earning it every single day." He shook his head. "I want to. You taught me that home isn't a building. It's the people inside it. And for me, that's always been you and Leo. I want to make sure you never have to doubt that again." He reached into his jeans pocket. When he pulled his hand out, he was holding a simple, classic solitaire ring. It wasn't flashy or ostentatious. It was honest and enduring, just like the love they had rebuilt. He didn't kneel. Instead, he stood tall, looking straight into her eyes, demonstrating the strength and certainty that had been missing all those years ago. "Clara Hayes, you are the strongest person I have ever known. You rebuilt your life, you raised our son, and you gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. Will you please make this house, and the rest of my life, a permanent home by marrying me?" Tears streamed down her face, but her eyes were brighter than they had been in years. The man standing before her wasn't the powerful CEO driven by ego. He was a vulnerable, honest man who had faced his failures and chosen love. "Yes," she choked out, a wave of emotion washing over her. "Yes, Ethan, of course I will." He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for 2 years and gently slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. In that moment, they didn't just promise a future. They finally closed the door on the past. The pain hadn't vanished, but the wound had healed, leaving behind a scar that now served as a testament to their strength, not their sorrow. A triumphant shout echoed from the yard. Leo had managed to drag a huge piece of log all the way to the porch. Ethan and Clara laughed through their tears, looking out at the boy. The house was finally ready. Their family was finally whole. Final words. A lasting legacy. And that is where we leave Ethan, Clara, and Leo. Their story is a powerful reminder that while betrayal can leave deep scars, consistency, humility, and genuine love can create a foundation for something even stronger than what was lost. Their legacy isn't the tragedy of the hospital room, but the triumphant love built on the porch of their forever home. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and sharing this journey with us. What kind of incredible story should we write next? Let us know.